Hello, my name is Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And welcome to the Geek Show for another edition of Impossible Mission, the video game series stroke podcast in which we talk about video games in a way which might not make everybody happy. Let's just say that. So let's just lean into that. So if you're watching on YouTube, click subscribe, like, and comment below with some of your suggestions for the theme that we'll reveal in due course. Or if you're on the social media, search for us at TGS_The Geek Show on Instagram or Twitter, or TGS.The Geek Show on Facebook, and you can have a chat with us there. All that out of the way, to one side, it's business. What are we talking about this week, Rob?
Right, today we're talking about remakes. Right, now this is a big, huge, massive, gigantinormous topic. And I don't know why I said gigantinormous, but I think that's my word of the day.
It's just to stress how big it is. It's so big a new word has been made up.
Yeah, see, everybody who's a gamer, everybody who's ever played video games has that game that you really want to see on a modern console. You probably played it 20, 30 years ago if you're that old. Or you played like some version of it that's on PSN or Xbox, whatever.
Well, let's just word it another way. If you've been playing games long enough, you get to the point where franchises just disappear. And then you'll think to yourself one day, where did that go? I'd like to see another one of them.
Yeah, you'd like to see another one of them, or you'd like to see that particular game remade. Now, this is coming off the back of things like Resident Evil being remade and Final Fantasy VII being remade and stuff like that.
There's a degree of that, but also when it's the passing of one generation to the next, you're kind of hopeful that some things will be rescued from the history vaults.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a reason why I mentioned Resident Evil, because we've got our own lists, right, of what we want to see remade. So I've mentioned Resident Evil, so I'm going to kick things off with Squaresoft, the then Squaresoft, their first 18-rated game, and their first kind of shot across the bows of the Resident Evil franchise and Silent Hill at the time.
Okay.
Which was Parasite Eve.
You see, I remember the name of this, but it was just one of those sort of, it was present very much during the PlayStation 1 era, but I can't remember what it actually was.
See, this is the thing. Parasite Eve is one of those games where it successfully mixed in RPG elements with a horror storyline and an action gameplay. And the controls were a little bit easier on the eye and easier on the hands than the Resident Evil controls at the time.
I know this sounds like an incredibly vague comment, but did the lead have a red leather jacket? Am I remembering something else?
I think you're remembering Resident Evil.
No, it wasn't Resident Evil, it was something else of that ilk. It was a very popular era for survival horrors, though, let's be honest.
Yeah, but Parasite Eve only ever had 3 games, right? The first 2 were Parasite Eve 1 and 2, and the third one was called The Third Birthday, which came out on the PSP, and that's it, right?
Was that for success reasons? It only had 3 because it wasn't a successful franchise?
This is the thing, it wasn't a successful franchise because look at what it was going up against. It was going up against the might of Silent Hill and Resident Evil. And this is the thing, a lot of Parasite Eve got swept under the carpet, but Parasite Eve, in a lot of ways, is actually, in a lot of ways, it's better as an actual game than Resident Evil was, and than Silent Hill was. Okay, it wasn't the same in terms of atmosphere or anything like that, but in terms of storytelling, it was actually on par with the two of them, and in terms of actual game enjoyment, I preferred Parasite Eve 2 to games like Resident Evil 2 and Silent Hill 2.
I'm really going to have to go on a deep dive on YouTube about Parasite Eve because it's bouncing around in my memory and I can't quite picture it.
Well, this is the thing. The story, the game is about a character called Aya Brea, and she is a New York City police officer, told over 6 days in Spain in 1997 as she attempts to stop the Eve, a woman who plans to destroy the human race through spontaneous human combustion. right? And then you get into all of the what the Parasite Eve actually means, because the game actually does relate to, the title does relate to the things that are going on. And then you had, that was the first game, and then you had Parasite Eve 2, where it basically built on the first story and continued on with the adventures of Aya Brea. It was Squaresoft's first M-rated, 18-rated game, and it was the first major American and Japanese game development collaboration for Squaresoft as well.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah. Produced by Hironobu Sakaguchi and directed by Takashi Tokita. So it has...
You're totally not reading the Wikipedia page there.
No, I've got the Wikipedia page open, but
I know,
what I'm saying is you've got two of Squaresoft's head people at the helm of this project. Do you see what I mean? So you got a lot of experience building this, and it was critically very well received.
Okay.
Both Parasite Eve 1 and 2 were critically very well received. The third birthday, not as much.
In those days, critical acclaim didn't really mean much, did it?
No, critical acclaim actually meant more in those days than it does now.
No, I mean, today, to a degree, critical acclaim of certain types of game will translate to sales. Whereas then, if you were critically acclaimed, it didn't mean anything. It just meant you were critically acclaimed. There was no guarantee of it finding its audience.
No, well, that's what I mean. Critical acclaim back then actually meant more than it does now. Now, everybody's a critic, okay? But back then...
No, that's not what I meant, but okay.
All I'm saying is that, okay, critical acclaim these days can translate into sales, but every game can be critically acclaimed. The reason why I say critically acclaimed is because back then we still had things like video game magazines and stuff like that.
Yeah, right? There's very few of them left.
But now, every other website is a video games website.
Yeah.
And all of those people are critics, apparently. And so critical acclaim means less now than it did back when these games came out on the PlayStation 1.
Right, I think I'm going to pick up that baton because I don't want you to turn this video into an old man's rant shouting at clouds.
I'm not shouting at clouds, I'm just saying, give us more Parasite Eve. Remake the first two Parasite Eve games. Right? Because they are amazing games. And a lot more people should play them.
I fear my choices are going to basically be drinking game fodder because I fear that I mentioned these ones probably too much. I deviate a bit after the first two, but the first two are very much, we saw this coming, Rob. Why'd you even bother to mention them? Type titles. And the first one relates to EA's Extreme Sports range. Part of it went under the EA Big banner. SSX came under the EA Big banner. I can't remember who produced Skate, but let's just say from a first option, it's those two games basically, but EA's Extreme Sports wing.
When you say SSX, right, because Skate I can understand, because Skate was kind of building on all of the other skateboarding games. But SSX, I have to ask, are you talking about a specific SSX game? Because I'll be honest, Tricky was the one that I really liked.
SSX 1 was kind of like a great proof of concept game.
Yeah.
It didn't have the sort of the visual panache that Tricky and 3 had.
Yeah.
But it had the engine, and that was good.
Yeah.
Number 2, or Tricky, was kind of one of the most transcendent moments in gaming for me, because it was just a game which was... You know when you get a game and you think, wow, this is for me. This was made for me.
Well, I think SSX... Have you noticed how I honed in straight away on Tricky rather than any other title in the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I'll stand up for SSX 3 as well, because that was kind of an evolution of Tricky. But after that... It kind of went... I think there was a few bits here and there on other formats, I can't recall. But the one which really put the nail in the coffin was... I can't remember what I think it was on PlayStation 3. SSX on Tour, in which they tried to bring it back. However, it wasn't like the very visually flamboyant 1080 backflips and moves where you literally divorce yourself from the... Like explosions and colour and all this sort of stuff going on. It was like the most pure arcade. It was basically Burnout for snowboarding games.
Yeah, and in the same way, you mentioned the PlayStation 3 version, Burnout Paradise was the nail in the coffin for the Burnout franchise.
Well, maybe not. But the point is, with SSX, they got rid of the heartbeat of what made that franchise, and it died.
Yes.
And I fear that sort of strategy is what killed the extreme sports game as well.
Well, the extreme sports games,
because they're trying to take it seriously, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, they made them simulations rather than actual games. And with extreme sports, you really want them to be games.
Yeah, you want SSX, not 1080 snowboarding.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to put it in terms of other sports, right? What you want to be playing is NBA Jam. You don't want to be playing NBA 2019 or whatever it is.
2K19, Rob.
2K19, wherever. You don't want to play the sports simulation. You want to play the one where, suddenly sparkles come out your hands while you're, a hang time of 6 seconds and then slam dunk the ball and shatter the glass.
In kind of a hard thing to explain with ball games, because I think ball games is a place that, like...
I'm just saying NBA Jam is well known.
Yeah. Ball games are a bit more easy to make... simulations out of, whereas extreme sports, you are on a board, maybe with wheels, maybe without wheels, jumping off stuff and doing mad moves.
Yeah.
Treating that like a simulation is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There is signs that in the case of skate, there is people who are picking up the baton with sessions which have not heard anything for a while, and Skater XL. But beyond that, maybe there's something, maybe it's one of these things where indie's leading the charge in the same way that survival horror was reignited by the indie community. Maybe indie games do the same for extreme sports games, but I remain skeptical purely because the one that I really, really want, the one that my heart yearns for most, is SSX to come back as it was.
Yeah. Speaking of extreme sports, right, take a fighting game, take a normal fighting game, and basically tweak it and work on it and put it in a more of a 3D environment, give you objects that you can throw, and make it a lot more fun, right? Just give it give it those jazz hands, and then you've got Power Stone, which is my next choice.
That was proto Smash Brothers, wasn't it?
It was Smash Brothers, I think, was out already by that point.
They're about the same time as each other, though, weren't they?
Yeah, but Power Stone, I have to say, if I had to choose between playing Smash Brothers and Power Stone wins.
Well, I think it's when you have too much of something, it gets kind of... Well, if you go to a convention, an anime convention, the one game that every single one will always have is Smash Brothers, so it kind of loses its power. Bad choice of words, but Power Stone, there was just two of them.
Power Stone 1 and 2, and then they did a kind of collected version on the PSP.
Yeah, it was a Sega franchise.
It had a bit of remastering when it came out on the PSP, but it was Capcom, actually.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, it was Capcom, and it was Capcom and Eidos, if I remember rightly.
Oh, there's a name I've not heard in a while.
Yeah. Well, I think the main developer was Capcom, but I would love to see a remake of Power Stone for modern consoles, because it has everything that anyone who's an aficionado of fighting games, anyone who plays like Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2 or Street Fighter, whatever it is, or any of those games, and treats themselves as a serious player, would find a lot to love in Power Stone, right? I think Power Stone is one of those games where you can be a button masher or you can be a seasoned technical player, and you'll still find a lot of things about the game that you will absolutely adore. The fact that it's a 3D environment rather than a 2D environment makes it a bit more difficult, because positioning then comes into it, rather than just positioning in a 3D environment comes into it.
Yeah, they've never really cracked that. They've cracked the 2D plane fighting game, But outside of sort of your Tekkens and stuff like that, they never really cracked the 3D fighter.
Well, the most
they're all of the same type, aren't they?
Yeah, the most you can do in games like Tekken and Soul Calibur is sidestep. Whereas Power Stone, you could actually run away from your your opponent, run behind a pillar, right, while they're still trying to frantically attack you, grab a box or a table or something like that, throw it at your opponent, and then follow up with your own attacks.
It had bazookas as well, didn't it? And weaponry.
And then you got the Power Stones and you became like super form. And then
it was a fun game, you know. It has that sense of you're really in an arena, whereas it's just set dressing for a lot of the Tekkens and the Soul Caliburs. There's some levels which aren't that, but most of them are.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. That's why I'd love to see a new version of Power Stone.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go from one stage of being predictable to the ultimate stage of being predictable. Whenever I talk about something, whether it's TV shows, whether it's whatever, if it's something, a video game that could come back to life in some way, whatever form, it is always Dead Space.
Yeah, that is your other go-to response.
Like that.
That is your other go-to response. Dead Space 1 and 2 were brilliant.
Yeah, they're all-timers for me, like all-time great survival horror games.
Dead Space 3?
Yeah, no, because they turned it co-op and made it a shooter, basically.
Hang on, didn't we cover Dead Space 3 and there was that other one in the Frozen Planet?
There was a light gun one that was on the Wii that was transferred. I can't remember the name of it, but that was pretty damn good, I think.
Yeah, but wasn't there one where... What was that game that was set on a frozen planet?
I can't remember, but the point is, EA got dollar signs in their eyes, as they usually do, and just absolutely bamboozled the world with it. I believe there was a movie, like an animated movie, and a comic book series. And then they just sort of ground it to the fact they made as much money as they humanly possibly could within as short a time space as they possibly could. And they killed it with number 3.
Yeah.
But off the back of Resident Evil 2's success, and off the back of Star Wars, the recent Star Wars games that EA put out through, I can't remember the name, the people who made Titanfall, EA have learnt that single-player games are alive, because they were always one of the biggest detractors or naysayers when they said single-player games are dead. It was always EA was at the front of that charge. And the fact that they've had one of their major success with a Star Wars game, and Resident Evil's over there being a major success, I believe it's only a matter of time before EA start looking at Dead Space again. So as much as I would love it to happen, I honestly think it is going to happen. And sort of connected to that is Silent Hill. I don't want Silent Hills because I don't like first-person horror, but I think it's only a matter of time, on the same sort of levels and the same sort of principles, that Konami, whether it's through themselves or third party who they're sort of license it out to, that Silent Hill comes back too.
See, this is the thing. I remember we had this conversation years ago, right? When Dead Space 3 came out. We also covered, at the time, Lost Planet 3. Right?
That wasn't a bad game.
Yeah, I remember the discussion that I had with you about this. And although they came from 2 different developers and 2 different publishers, the point you made, I thought, actually does still stand true. What the people who made Dead Space 3 did, they basically made Lost Planet 3. And what the people who made Lost Planet 3 did, they basically made Dead Space 3.
Yeah, because, I remember, Lost Planet 3 was pretty good, wasn't it?
Yeah, if it was Dead Space.
Yeah. And the only problem with Lost Planet was it had that very big tell of arcadey shooters where shoot the orange bit to hurt it.
Yeah. But as a Dead Space game, it would have worked fine.
Yeah. Bring back Lost Planet 2. There's a name I've not thought about for a long time.
So, yeah.
So what's your third one then, Rob?
My third one, when Metal Gear came out, when Metal Gear Solid came out, I should say, there was another game that kind of fell by the wayside, even though it had a plethora of releases on the PlayStation 1 and 2 and even on the PSP. This game franchise fell by the wayside, and everyone has been singing the praises of Metal Gear and the franchise for years and years and years. But I'll be honest, right? When you look at the storyline and the narrative of Metal Gear, it's kind of, all right, okay, this is basically a fantasy. This is basically a spy fantasy story.
It's badly translated spy fantasy because it makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, but when you look at the storyline of a game like Siphon Filter, it's a lot more real world, right? Because Siphon Filter is my next choice. I would love to see a remake from the beginning of Siphon Filter all the way through, because Siphon Filter, right, you know how, Splinter Cell, right?
Yes.
Splinter Cell, I think, owes more to games like Siphon Filter than it does to games like Metal Gear, because Splinter Cell automatically got put in the same category as Metal Gear, stealth action game, yada yada yada. And everyone was saying, "Oh yeah, it's a rival to Metal Gear," and I'm going, "This has got more in common with Siphon Filter."
Metal Gear Solid is like a combination of James Bond and Escape from New York.
Yeah, whereas Siphon Filter was basically, what I loved about Siphon Filter was not just the gameplay, but the sheer range of equipment that you had access to. You had thermal goggles and night vision goggles. You had sniper rifles that these things could be equipped on, and normal assault rifles and normal handguns and various things like that. You didn't have. There was this wealth of choice as you were going through these massive areas on these missions, and you could basically go in all guns blazing or choose the stealth option if you wanted to. It wasn't forced on you. It was kind of a proto Splinter Cell, proto Deus Ex Human Revolution type game. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would love to see, because there was Siphon Filter back in '99, and then you had number 2 and number 3, which came out in the years after. Then you had the Omega Strain in 2004 and Dark Mirror in 2006, and then the last in the series, which was Logan's Shadow, and that was 2007. And here we are now in 2020, and I think it'd be interesting to go back to the original Siphon Filter.
It's a Sony exclusive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's Sony Computer Entertainment. It was, if I remember rightly, it was the Eidetic, who were the developers of it, who are part of Sony now. I think Sony bought them out.
Yeah, so they can bring it back. They've got all the... It's not obviously going to be the same people. That's like dream scenario when that happens. But no reason why they can't bring it back with a fresh new perspective.
Yeah, I think Siphon Filter is... and now that we're in an era where basically we're probably not going to see any Metal Gear Solid or any Metal Gear games for the foreseeable future.
Well, there was that story where rumour, heavily on the rumour, that Sony were wanting to buy Metal Gear, Silent Hill and Castlevania to do stuff with them, which is very ambitious. I don't think there's any truth in that rumour.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Because Konami know that they're sitting on... Konami basically have 3 geese that lay golden eggs.
They've got some of the most amazing franchises under their belt.
Yeah. Unless they're faced with liquidation, they're not going to get rid of those licenses. Right?
They'd license them out. That's what they'd do.
Yeah, those copyrights. They'd license them out, but they wouldn't sell the copyright for them.
No way. That would be incredibly foolish.
Yeah, that would be foolish. But yeah, Siphon Filter... Sony, you've got the rights to it already. Do it. You know you want to. Do it!
Problem with it, though, is... I don't know what it was called. Was it Syndicate? Where that was brought back and it turned it from a very isometric strategy game into a first-person shooter. That's my only worry with things like that.
Well, Siphon Filter was already a third-person action-adventure. So that isn't really an issue. You can translate it fairly easily. The storyline is already there. You're just building on what's already there, and most of the stuff is already there to make this game.
Yeah. My number 3, my third pick, is from a company which I don't have the longest history with, but the one time I did get a Nintendo console, one of my fondest times with it was with F-Zero X, because... I like races of that ilk. I love Wipeout and things like that. But as far as the franchises which Nintendo do, most of them are alive in some way, even if it's just like a character in Smash Brothers. But one which I felt like it could help bring in people who are a bit more skeptical and think of Nintendo as that company who makes kiddie games. Because that is a stigma which they have been stuck with for a very, very long time. Love them or loathe them, it is a stigma and it's an unfair one.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you bring up F-Zero because F-Zero...
But F-Zero is one which could bring back in other people outside of the traditional Nintendo fan.
Well, F-Zero was one of those games where it was just off to the side doing its own thing, and people knew of it.
It was bloody amazing as well, F-Zero X.
Yeah, but I mean, in that vein, it's weird because it's a little bit like Wave Race in that respect, in that it doesn't get the attention it deserves.
No, nowhere near. Because Wave Race was very good too.
Yeah.
And, here we go. Was it Excite Bike?
Yes.
Their motocross game. That's another one which was dead, which I pretend... Excite Bike 64 was a good game, from memory. But, yes, I absolutely adored F-Zero, because it's just one of those pure arcade races which didn't have an overly stylized, cartoony colour palette. It could be played by anybody. It wasn't... It's just a gamer's game. I know I'm getting into and bogging myself down at you with what I'm trying to say.
I understand what you mean. Don't worry about it.
But it's about branding. It's about the image that you put forward. And Nintendo have a... When people think of Nintendo, they think of Mario. They think of Zelda. They think of lush greens and double jumps and collectibles and power-ups and stuff like this. Whereas F-Zero is just a futuristic super speed racer, and it's one of the best ever examples of them. And to not do that, I think Nintendo are overlooking a sleeping giant, and I would love to see it return.
Excellent. So, we've harped on enough about this. This is actually the first part of what we're going to do. So, yeah, you've got 6 games to choose from. We'll be back next time with the second part of this, and with some honourable mentions in that one as well. So look out for that. But in the meantime, let us know what you think. See if you can predict some of the ones that we're going to come up with in part 2 in the comments below.
Thanks for watching.